Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? How's your day going? Are you Donald Trump? Well, probably not. I don't know how his day is going this morning. Oh, is this a new tweet this morning? The phony story in the failing New York Times is a total fabrication. Total fabrication. Written by the same people as last discredited story on women. Well, that's one down, 14 to go. I think we're up to 15 accusers. That whole thing about it being him claiming the other day that it was 11 years since he did this or had this conversation with Billy Bush, but at the same time there were now 11 accusers, so one for each year that it's been since he spoke to Billy Bush. But actually, that wasn't even all that interesting, a coincidence. Plus, it didn't last at all. Looks like we're up to 15. I think last night I tucked away, finally before passing out, I had a story that compiled, I think, 10 in a row. And then this morning I saw Marley, did she say Maitland? Even though there's no I in there? Is that, or it's either Maitland or Matlin. I don't remember from way back when she was on TV how they pronounced it, but famous actress. Hearing impaired actress, you may remember her that way, but I remember her as actress. But that was definitely an interesting angle on her career. Possibly one of the best known of all time in that respect. Anyway, I guess she's got things to say about her time on The Celebrity Apprentice as well. I thought that was number 11, and then I saw a tweet go by that said 15. I don't have any basis to question that we're up to 15 because it's coming fast and furious. The floodgates now open, of course, and everybody coming out of the woodwork. Why? Well, when one person finds the courage, you often find that there are several more who then follow and say, I can't leave this other person out there alone on their own, taking all the fire for being accused of fabricating their story. I have to do my part to have her back. So I think that's a lot of what has happened here. Plus, of course, a lot of people, wow, I mean, I don't even know where to go with this. A lot of people were likewise, I think, triggered by by his denials. And hearing the description in particular, I think for a lot of people, the Tic Tacs and just go in and kiss her kind of stuff, triggered a lot of people to, one, remember that they, too, had been subject to that kind of boorish behavior / sexual assault, depending on, I guess if you're really old school, well, it's just boorish behavior. Well, yeah, sure. It's sexual assault these days. It always was. We just have finally come around to calling it that openly. I guess people didn't like the word sexual, and so they left that out of there. And, good for them. Some people probably tried very hard to put that behind themselves and in their lives and set it aside. In particular, there's a very interesting account by, and this is ridiculous that it's even come to this and that it's so easily documented and by such a credible source. That is to say, I don't know why he did this, but he attacked, apparently, a writer for People magazine who was there to interview him. Not only there to interview him, but there to interview him about his brand new, then 1-year-old, marriage to Melania, and she was pregnant and in the house, and according to her account, he attacked her nonetheless and then pretended nothing happened when Melania returned, which I guess is what I would have expected him to do. But that one was really an incredible story. We'll definitely share that one because of the dynamic in which the woman says, basically tries to put it aside, and she doubted herself that it even happened for a while, and then just sort of went through this process that it's very difficult to understand if you've never been involved in a situation like that, or you're not a woman. I think that changes a lot. Trying, especially in a professional setting and a much sought after job in a organization that's dependent on celebrity access. There's a million things going on in that story, and that one was the most frustrating to me because you could just see even in her voice of her writing, herself asking herself, why did I not do something? Why didn't I punch him in the face? Why didn't I gouge his eyes? Can you imagine what the story would have been at that point too? If the interview gets canceled because she punched him and she really damages the guy and gives him a punch in the face. The whole thing, by the way, the attack is sort of not foiled, but is interrupted as a service, as a feature, not a bug, by the racist butler. One of the butlers, anyway. I don't know if there's more than one butler. I don't think she put a name to it, but we only know about the racist butler down at Mar-a-Lago. And obviously as a service to the boss. Here comes the wife. Get off the reporter. Wow. Anyway, gosh, there's a million ways to go with this today. We'll try as many as possible. I don't even think we can get to all the people who are accused. And again, the number will be outdated by the time I give you one anyway. That's been the nature of the last 12 hours, maybe a little bit more. And of course, Greg Dworkin will be joining us shortly and can tell you all about how Morning Joe has spent, I guess, I don't know whether he spent the whole morning, but I saw Greg already very early on, first thing in the morning, already complaining that Joe Scarborough is like 15 women are out there accusing Donald Trump of sexually harassing them or in some cases merely boorish behavior, and up to and including sexual assault. And of course, Joe Scarborough. What about Bill Clinton? It's all about Bill Clinton. I guess he's still in Clinton impeachment mode. Meanwhile, you have Katrina Pearson, the kook, is out there on CNN. CNN put together a panel yesterday. Four members on the panel. I don't even know who the other two people were. Katrina Pearson and Corey Lewandowski are on this panel. What's the point of a panel at that point? Anyway, Katrina used it to be an armrest truther. One of the first round of stories to come out was from the New York Times, a woman who claims that she was seated, possibly intentionally, next to Donald Trump on a flight to New York. This was in the early 80s, and I guess still flying commercial. And she found herself magically, for some reason, upgraded to first class. No one really knows why. She said, okay, sure, I'll go. Voila, she's seated next to Donald Trump, and from her telling, the armrest goes up, and then his hands are all over her for, I don't know, the rest of the flight, I guess. Must have been really super pleasant. And Katrina Pearson came on television to say, to list the names of aircraft she had heard of, and insist that none of them have movable armrests in first class. It's like forensic. And I guess the design of the line was to convince people that the research was so thorough because of the number of fact-ish, truthy things she was throwing out there, that it was a flight to New York, so it wouldn't have been one of the larger aircraft because I guess it was supposed to be some kind of shuttle-type flight, although I don't know where it originated. And these are the aircraft that might have flown those routes in the early 1980s, and none of them had movable armrests, except then aviation authorities actually began to chime in, and they assured Twitter anyway, yeah, there were plenty of movable armrest seats in first class flying on the airlines of the day, flying into and out of New York, domestically at that, and there's really no truth whatsoever to it. As soon as she said it, that rang the alarm bells for me. One, because Katrina Pearson said it, so it's probably not true. By the way, had every indication of being a Steve Bannon line and not her own. And, of course, once you combine the two of them, the chances of the facts being right on it are minuscule. And within a couple hours, the aviation authorities were out. I can share some of those tweets with you, so we'll have a little bit of everything to go over. And I think you'll be current, although I'll bet if you're awake and you're listening live and you got your Twitter machine on, then you probably know more at this point than I do, because I was busy making lunches and packing book bags this morning with one eye on Twitter. All right. So I'll have Pocket at the ready. Here comes Greg Dworkin, having heard the downward trend of my rant here. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning.
Hey.
So much going on in so little time.
Yes. And so we'll have to get through the stories of about 7 accusers per hour, I think. To keep
Something
up.
like that. I mean, I can't even keep up. But the last tweet I saw that actually tried to summarize it. This is where our compulsive friends in the media and on Twitter who like to make lists, Google Docs, need to sit down and start going over this. I know there's at least 11 women and at least 7 different media sites.
Okay.
And that's important because you can't sue them all.
You can. Oh, yes, right.
I
didn't even get to the threats to sue. He doesn't have the cash to sue probably more than 2 at any given time. But, he's looking to sue the biggest ones, including the New York Times, which has the controlling precedent.
Some of the best First Amendment lawyers in the country. So, So could you please explain, or maybe Armando, who's an expert in this area, could explain to us why immediately after Donald Trump threatened to sue the New York Times, everybody else answered with a one-word answer as to why this wasn't going to happen. Everybody tweeted, no, Discovery.
Yes. The Discovery Channel.
So what's the Discovery Channel got to do with this?
No, not really. The Discovery is the phase, pretrial phase, in a lawsuit like this, wherein the opposing attorneys list, when it's document discovery, or they sometimes take depositions, they basically list their demands to mine information that has to be disclosed pre-trial by both sides. And the issue here would be, for Donald Trump, he would be getting deposed by some of the best lawyers in the country and grilled on questions of his behavior going back years. And basically, in the discovery phase, there's also much looser rules regarding evidence. And,
but I mean, do they get to ask him things like, so is there any evidence that you were ever sued about this before that you haven't talked about yet? Is there any evidence that it's in your tax returns?
Yeah, and they can ask.
How far do you get to go to ask him stuff?
You can go pretty much anywhere. I mean, they can object that something might not be, even if they answered, wouldn't be admissible. And you say, well, we'll leave the admissions question for the judge. For the time being, essentially, my question is, I have a list of names of women, and I need you to answer me about, 1, whether you know them, 2, whether you've had any relationship with them, whether you've ever made contact with them, whether there's any sexual contact. And you could just stay there for hours listing your accusations. Even if he denies every single one, that means sitting there and being accused for hours by name, and putting forth affidavits from everybody who says they were inappropriately touched by him, and you can make all sorts of demands for production of documents, and I need
that
you
would
to
be
give
pretty
me a copy of
embarrassing
every
over time,
email
but
you've
for the
ever.
purposes of the election, it would take a long time, and then it all gets sealed, and we don't get to see it anyway, right? So,
Well, it could end up that way, but I guess
not to be a cynic about it.
The parties would have to agree to that. You can't just have Donald Trump say, and I want this sealed. The other side has to agree. So you probably won't see that. And a lawsuit like this, very often the newspapers will simply move to dismiss right away. And they could move to dismiss this right away because it's pretty baseless. It just doesn't meet any of
it's baseless, and you can't prove or even pretend to prove that the New York Times was malignant or doing it on purpose or anything like that.
If they were to win on that, then there would be no discovery phase. But that also would, in addition to depositions, would include demands for documents. And you basically say, I need a copy of everything in your files and emails and physical files and whatever relating to this person. I want, your scheduler's notes about whether or not she called and asked for an interview and anything relating to them. And you basically rifle through his files, which is exactly what he doesn't want.
Right. So, here is the actual, what was described, by Mark Harris, a writer and journalist on Twitter as the suicide note. And this is what actually was written to Dean Baquette. Demand for retraction. Dear Mr. Baquette, we represent Donald J. Trump.
That made me think of we represent the Lollipop Guild, of course.
Doesn't it? We write, and well, good, because he's melting. We write in response to the libelous article published October 12, 2016 by the New York Times entitled, Two Women Say Donald Trump Touched Them Inappropriately. Your article is reckless, defamatory, and constitutes libel per se.
No.
It is apparent from, it's not long, so
okay.
We'll go back and dissect it. It's apparent, and by the way, this is all right in the Pundit Roundup if you want to read along.
Oh, yeah,
it is apparent from, among other things, the timing of the article, that it is nothing more than a politically motivated effort to defeat Mr. Trump's candidacy. This is why you apparently performed an entirely inadequate investigation to test the veracity of these false and malicious allegations, including why these two individuals waited in one case 11 years and in another case more than 3 decades before deciding to come forward with these false and defamatory statements. Clearly, the New York Times is willing to provide a platform to anyone wishing to smear Mr. Trump's name and reputation prior to the election, irrespective, at least they didn't say it regardless, irrespective of whether the alleged statement has any basis in fact. We hereby demand you immediately cease any further publication of this article, remove it from your website, and issue a full immediate retraction and apology. Failure to do so will leave my client with no option but to pursue all available actions and remedies. So this is a threat directly from Donald Trump and not from the campaign.
Yes. I like that one. That's a terrible letter, but, you know, I love that one too. By the way, failure to do so will leave my client with no option but to pursue all available remedies, which are none.
Yes.
So, okay.
Which will hang you by the neck until you cheer up, right? So they went ahead and fulfilled their threat of writing a threatening letter.
That is good. Strongly worded.
Lawsuit is a different story altogether. You know, meanwhile, all of this is happening, and then one of the bigger items on this, there's two ones, of course, being a pediatrician that catch my eye, and they involve children. There's still no mention of the, at the time, 13-year-old rape case, which is going to be discussed in December. If you try to bring that up, everybody on TV shuts you down. I've seen that happen a couple of times on cable.
Oh, yeah?
And then there's the Daily News story.
How come that happens?
I don't know. I guess they don't want to talk about it.
Well, they're already getting sued, so try again.
Yeah. The Daily News cover for today, again, I have this in the Pundit Roundup, big cover.
Okay, I'm going to look.
Tawdry Trump perv scandal explodes, had eyes for a 10-year-old. Said he'd be dating her in 10 years. Plus, 4 women accuse him of grope attacks. So they went with the kid attack, you know. And it's one of those things, you know, somebody tweeted, you know, this is such an incredible news day and such a bad day for Donald Trump that the story of him walking in on Miss Teen USA while they were getting dressed is like not the most important story of the day.
Yeah, somehow that's true. By the way, ask your doctor if grope attacks is right for you.
Yeah, something like that. So, you know, obviously things are exploding, and it's the end of his campaign, except it's not the end of his campaign in terms of him pulling off the ticket. It's just that nobody's going to vote for him. And when I say nobody, I mean a whole lot of Republicans are going to vote for him.
Yes.
But he's not going to get enough votes to win. So before we put this sex scandal back on top, let's talk about where he was prior to this happening, because there was a whole bunch of polls that came out yesterday that put this in perspective.
Okay.
You know, he was deserted by the LA Times poll, which was a tie. So even the Real Clear Politics average had Clinton up by 6.2. And listen to the polls that came out yesterday. There was the New Orleans NOLA tracker, which has Clinton plus 6, UPI, which had been tied or up 5 for Trump, now is Clinton plus 6.4. And remember, never trust a poll with decimals. The LA Times yesterday had Clinton up by 0.4. I think today it has Trump up by 0.2, essentially a tie. And we know that that's a whacked out poll, but it's important because the Real Clear Politics keeps it in the average. So even with that in the average, he's still leading by 6. Reuters was up by 7. Rasmussen was up by 4 yesterday. I think it's up by Trump up by 3 today. Some bizarre swing because it's Rasmussen, but you don't have to pay attention to that. There's an online poll called Insights West that was out yesterday, national poll, Clinton plus 5. There's a lot of crappy polls, but the good polls, the solid polls, the gold standard polls are having her up close to double figures, and even the crappy polls are having her up 5 or 6. So clearly she was on her way to winning. And one of the reasons I posted the Real Clear Politics graphic is that it's got a lovely, really sharp downslope for Trump as he drops away and she goes up. It's kind of nice to see. So that was the national. And then the states come out, and they're even worse. One of the more fascinating ones, of course, was the MU law poll by Charles Franklin out of Wisconsin. Wisconsin, she's up by 7. We'll get to that in a minute. Because mid-poll, Trump's support drops like a rock when the Access Hollywood tapes come out. Ohio plus 9. Utah tied. Missouri minus 5. We talked about some of these on the show this morning, but a lot more came out. Maine by 8. New Hampshire by 8. Michigan by 12. 2 Florida plus 3. And Nevada plus 4. So he's losing before this happens. And as I wrote this morning on Daily Kos, I feel bad for him and for Paul Ryan. Okay, I'm over it. And, by the way, there's actually even an actual, genuine, real, original Rand poll from the Rand panel. And they're not doing it in real time, but they published their September data, and they have Clinton up by 10.
Okay.
So the LA Times, as we now know, is just doing it wrong.
Yeah, well.
And the Rand method, but they're not the Rand poll. The Rand poll is getting it right. So, as we pivot, because it's politics and you have to use that word, from whether he'll lose to how he'll lose.
Okay.
Just keep in mind, his deplorables don't care about you, me, the Republican Party, or America. Right? They're just trying to figure out how to save their skin, and that's why the fierce counterattack, the thing that, again, and there's a nice little clip of it, there's like a 30-second or 1.5 minute at most clip of Joe Scarborough this morning saying, well, so the real issue and the big story here is Bill Clinton and his, activities 20 years ago, because we can't be hypocrites about this. So let's talk about what Clinton did 20 years ago, because forget about this stuff. Let's talk about Clinton for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And you scratch your head and say, what are you talking about and why are you doing it? And then to just make matters worse, it isn't just talking about Clinton. It's attacking the women who are coming forward, not with their stories. It's the slimy, smarmy way. It isn't, it's not that I don't trust their stories, but why are they coming out now? It must be politically motivated. It must be Oppo research. Why else would they be coming out a month before the election when there's a very clear answer to this? During that debate, which is in retrospect going to turn out to be even, and I say this about every debate so far, I thought Clinton destroyed him in the first one. I thought Tim Kaine stuck a stiletto in the ribs to Mike Pence, which turns out to be true because remember, everybody said Mike Pence won that debate. He didn't. Kaine did because Kaine forced Pence to say, how could you possibly defend this guy? And then Pence was forced to defend him. And so this debate, what happens? Anderson Cooper nails Donald Trump right between the eyes and gets him on record better than any deposition because it's in real time and 80 million people are watching, that Trump denies that his bragging about groping women is in fact actualized, that he talked about it but he didn't do it. But it turns out he did. And so because he said that, that's why women are coming out now. And you have to come out in numbers because he'll attack them individually if you don't come out in numbers. This is Bill Cosby stuff.
Yeah.
Why didn't you talk about it at the time? Because you got a billionaire who's going to attack you if you do, right. And you're just like an ordinary person. Why would you come out? Why
didn't this disgusting person who's totally at fault and is lying and who's about to be sued for $1 billion come out sooner? I wonders.
So that's what was discussed on Scarborough this morning. That's why I was so annoyed with it.
Okay.
Anyway, new poll out today. Let's do the MU Law poll, and let's do the new poll out from Bloomberg, because I think both of those are quite interesting. The new Bloomberg poll out this morning is Pennsylvania, Clinton plus 9, and also cleaning up in the suburbs. But back to the Marquette poll. Let me just send you over the URL because it's always a lot more fun if you can follow along. So Marquette Law School polls finds 44% of Wisconsin likely voters supporting Clinton and 37% supporting Republican Donald Trump. Gary Johnson gets 9, and Jill Stein, whoever she is, gets 3.
Okay.
Fine. But listen to how this went, because they polled Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
All
and
right.
the tapes come out Friday evening.
Friday evening. All right. Yes. Right.
Okay? All likely voters on Thursday. Clinton 40, Trump 41. So Trump's up by 1. That's a -1 for Clinton.
Okay.
Friday. Clinton 44, Trump 38. That's a
What?
+6.
Okay.
Now, the tapes came out
Friday night.
Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a 2-day sample, and this is why you can see that you have to take the full sample before you're really going to declare anything. Right? So that's not news that Thursday and Friday are that different. It's essentially a close race. It's a Trump lead by 1 or a Clinton lead by 6. It's going to turn out to be like a Clinton lead by 4 when it's all said and done the way this is looking. And that's what happens when you poll small samples.
Oh, all right. Okay. That seemed like a big... Okay. I
It
guess
seems like
so.
a big deal, but it's not that big a deal. And then you get to Saturday, Sunday. Okay?
All
now,
right.
some of the Friday night might have
Right.
started coming in after the tapes because it was an afternoon thing.
Possibly.
Possibly. So maybe some of that +6 is a little bit of things shifting. But look what happens on Saturday and Sunday. Clearly after it happened and everybody's heard about it. It's Clinton 49, Trump 30.
Okay.
Trump goes from
Could be
41
noise.
on Thursday to 30. Clinton goes from 40 on Thursday to 49. That's a 19-point turnaround, 20-point turnaround.
Well, small sample. Could be noise.
Yeah, it could be nice. Let's look at it among women,
Yes.
just to be clear here.
Noisy
Okay.
women.
Thursday, Clinton 45, Trump 36. Friday, Trump 60, Trump 33. They're starting to hear about it.
Okay, yes.
And Saturday, Sunday, Clinton 56, Trump 23.
Saturday.
She goes from a +9 to a +27 to a +33 with women.
Clinton 4,982.
It's something like that. And among men, it happened among men as well.
Yeah.
Thursday,
all
Clinton
right.
was a -12, Friday a -16, and Saturday, Sunday a +1.
All right. Yeah.
So again, you can be fooled by these small samples, but when you compare Thursday to Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, you can really clearly see what happens. And here's another interesting thing. They were looking at evangelicals up in Wisconsin. Remember, this is Scott Walker, Charlie Sykes territory. Charlie Sykes being the radio talk show host, conservative, who very much is a Walker guy, but does not like Trump. Talk show radio in Wisconsin was very anti-Trump. But there's a strong presence there for evangelicals. Thursday, Clinton 24, Trump 64. So she was down 40 points on Thursday, and by Sunday it's 31-47.
Wow.
So she went from -40 to -16.
Sunday is always an important day for evangelicals.
Yeah, you would think. And so the point here is that you can actually see the shift based on the tapes.
Yes.
And let's see what we
And
got
that's
here.
still
Now, this is the new
accusation.
Bloomberg poll. And we're looking at Pennsylvania rather than Wisconsin. And see what we got here. I think I put up a graphic just under the Thursday title for you. You want to take a peek at that because it kind of tells the story. Clinton statewide is 51-42, but in the 4 Philadelphia suburban counties, she's 59-31. And I think Trump leads by 11 in the rest of the state. Nowhere close to being able to win. And I just want to see if there's video followed. Statewide, 60% of likely voters said they were bothered a lot by the 2005 Trump recording, including 24% of his own supporters. Among women, 69% were bothered a lot compared to 51% of men.
Yes.
At least 51% of men got it right. And that was even more true in the 4 big suburban counties that make up a lot of the Pennsylvania population. And everybody agreed that the tapes were bad. More people agreed that the tapes were bad than agreed that his tax returns in the New York Times were bad.
Oh. Well, okay.
Right? So, as it turns out there. Now, one of the interesting things that comes out of this also is that whereas the division or the gap between Clinton and Trump is pretty big, McGinty is only leading Toomey in the Senate race by 2 points. So we've seen a lot of the ability so far of Republican, especially in the Senate, Republican office holders and those who are running for the Senate to distance themselves from Trump and get voters to say, okay, well, Trump is not a typical Republican. We hate him. Okay, I'll grant you that. But, this other person running as a Republican, I don't hate them the same way I hate Trump. Not the same party in my mind. Somehow I make that distinction.
Yeah.
So far that's happening. But what these polls miss, because you can't gauge that, and we won't know until Election Day, is do some of these disappointed Republicans who really are not thrilled with Trump just stay home altogether? That could turn a 2-point lead into a 5-point lead easily enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to wait on that. So when you put it all together, you find that that Clinton was already winning, starting to increase her lead just on the first set of stuff that came out. You could make an argument, and this is based on the Wall Street Journal poll, again with those small numbers that showed a bigger lead before the Sunday debate and a smaller lead after the Sunday debate, the argument there being that you consolidated Republicans with a feisty performance by Donald Trump, even though normal humans were turned off by it. But now you got this second round, and we haven't even started to poll that because it all happened yesterday, and it's still, getting rolled out today. And so we'll see what happens with this. You can't imagine that Trump has any chance whatsoever to win the presidency. The question is going to be, who else does he take down with it?
Everybody, I hope. Well, that would be the best we could hope for. Would be the stay-home effect is terrific.
Right. And this is not one of these things that is, people have been quiet about. It's all over social media. It's all over cable. It's going to dominate cable for the next couple of days. And Trump's debate performance is not.
No, not likely. And how long are we from the next debate? Still a week or so, right?
I think it's a week.
Okay. So we got time to
there's going to be a third debate. Now that's the other question that's on the table.
Okay. Oh yes. Again, huh?
Is Trump going to debate a third time? Should Clinton debate a third time? Does he have to?
Nobody has to.
Right. I mean, there's no law that says you have to. That's exactly right.
Yeah, you could certainly walk away from it. I've seen a lot of people speculating that he doesn't do it or simply says this whole thing is unfair to me. But remember, this is the debate moderated by Chris Wallace. I have a feeling like they maybe
But he's at war with everybody, including the regular Republicans.
Yeah, that could be true.
And Fox is the network he wants to replace after he loses.
True.
So there's no automatic just because it's Fox they're going to do it.
That's true. Although, yeah, I mean, I guess now the question is how mad is Roger Ailes at Fox? Does he think he still controls it, or is he mad at them and would love to deny them the debate? Right. I don't know.
Now, if you want a psychological look, and I'll leave this for you, and I won't necessarily go over it here, but just to tell you it exists, there's this really fascinating piece in Politico magazine. I think he's a very dangerous man for the next 3 or 4 weeks. At one of the most explosive moments of the campaign, and with a month to go, Political magazine reconvened the top Trumpologists to dissect the Donald's final days as a candidate and what comes next. Mm-hmm. So they have a number of people who have written books about Trump or articles or something. There's Wayne Barrett, Trump, the Deals and the Downfall, 1992. Yes. Gwenda Blair, author of The Trumps, 3 Generations That Built an Empire. There's Timothy O'Brien, author of Trump Nation, The Art of Being the Donald. And there's Michael D'Antonio, author of Never Enough, Donald Trump and the Pursuit of Success.
All right. We're going to have to do some... there's no more time for this reading. Who's here?
Somebody walked down the street and didn't check with us first. Let me attend to this.
Okay.
But take a look at that article, because there's a couple of pull quotes you could use.
All right, let's see. It's, well, I wandered down here. Politico. Okay. I think he's a very dangerous man for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, let's take a look here. Oh, the pull quotes. All right. That should be easy to spot.
Yeah. So, for example, Michael D'Antonio, I didn't come up with anything that anyone would go on the record. I did interview women who confirmed some pretty aggressive, if not violent, actually, I considered it violent sexual behavior, but nobody will go on the record with this. The thing I found consistent where Donald is concerned is that this kind of language and act is in his mind. I mean, that's the thing that really shocks me is he's so predatory. and so oriented towards seizing what he wants rather than relating to a person that it's pathological. I've never heard anybody say this kind of thing ever, and the way he's talking about it as if it's in a locker room, that's just ridiculous.
It's also ridiculous that anybody would do that in a locker room, but yes.
Right. And then they asked about, well, what about the non-disclosure stuff? And O'Brien, one of the other authors, says, well, I interviewed Marla and Donald knew about it, and I interviewed Ivana and Donald knew about it, but in the course of interviews, there were a lot of things they were very nervous about that didn't include just a classic, that maybe did include a classic NDA, non-disclosure agreement. They were nervous about him.
Yeah.
And they said, well, do you think this is lust or fame? And Wayne Barrett said, it's nothing to do with lust. This is subjugation. And O'Brien said, right, it's acquisition.
Yeah.
Said, this has nothing to do with sex. This is a total power move. If you're talking about, I can plunge my tongue down your mouth anytime I see, and anytime I want. I just make my move quickly after doing a round of power tic-tacs.
Yeah. Yum. Yeah, I mean, in ways, I say, well, this is usually offered up as an excuse when people say, well, he's a product of his times. He's not that ancient, of course. But I mean, a better way of putting it is, of course, to use it as a springboard for the discussion of the long history of what amounts to rape culture.
Yep.
The Donald likely took away from many media sources, movies, television, popular novels, etc.
Approval of Billy Bush.
Yeah, right. The idea that this is sort of how power operators work. How many times have we seen that trope in the movies? You know, where the sexy billionaire says, "I know what I want and I go after it with everything I've got." I mean, that character, and how many times does that character end up the hero too? I mean,
growing up, his idols were Hugh Hefner and James Bond.
Yeah,
according to these authors.
Well, that's one is not real, and the other is kind of. But I mean, yeah, that's probably about as accurate a way of describing it as you can. It's completely nuts, but it is true. It's out there, and he's got the simplest possible view of everything in the world, and so he's just not going to be able to digest properly input like the suave billionaire who, quote, knows what he wants and goes for it. The rest of us, most of us say, well, I'm not a billionaire, so I'm not going to do that. If you can't analyze it any further than that will still suffice. But
even superficially.
No, but that's not real.
Okay, people like James Bond are considered attractive to women.
True.
Trump is not. He just takes it.
Yeah,
He's the villain.
Yeah.
He's not the hero. That's part of it. Anyway, they asked the author,
his hair is good.
How's he going to be a loser for 3 weeks? And O'Brien says, and this I think is some of the interesting stuff in here because, we have to watch this for the next month. How is he going to lose and what happens after? I think he's going to wage a scorch, the Earth campaign for the next 3 weeks, O'Brien says. And if he loses, which I think he's going to, I think he's going to lose badly, bigly. He's then going to come up with a scenario in which it was stolen from him, that the election was rigged because he survived by creating alternate realities. And he'll never say to himself he lost because he had a skeletal campaign operation, which he did, that he lost because he's unappealing to a large swath of voters, which he is, that he lost because he's willfully ignorant about public policy, which is true, that he lost because he's a nasty and unappealing bigot, which he is. He'll never, ever acknowledge any of that. He'll just come up with an alternative reality that says it was rigged against me. And Antonio says, well, I think that what Tim is saying here, Tim O'Brien, is consistent with the guy who would decide to have this campaign in the first place. Who would proceed knowing that he has had all of these problems in his background, knowing how much audio and video exists, having been on Howard Stern, and said horrible things. He just doesn't seem to recognize his own issues and problems and how he's perceived. So maybe for the next 3 weeks, he's going to be trying out, Breitbart TV and proving to the masses that follow him that he's as red in tooth and claw as he says. And as Tim said, he's already laid the groundwork to declare it was rigged in the first place. Sure. So, there's that hanging out there. And the other part of that, I suppose, I heard people mention on cable yesterday that the story goes that when you talk to the campaign, from reporters who talked to the campaign, that they were perfectly willing, to have David Bossie and Steve Bannon do the op-ed, oppo stuff on Clinton. But normally a campaign would also do it on yourself so that you have an idea of what stuff might come out. And they asked Trump about that, and he said, no, I'm not paying for that. You can't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And so the campaign has no idea about this stuff. And you can see even Kellyanne Conway on TV when she's asked about, what about this? What about? I don't know. I didn't know about that. I have no idea. You have to ask him. I don't know. And that's probably true. She probably doesn't know anything.
That's the most truthful part of it, possibly.
Yeah, the rest of it is nonsense, but that part's probably true.
Yeah. How do they do it? How do they manage all of the swirling winds? They just, I don't know, or no comment, or that didn't happen. Oh, wow, that's really... Well,
one of the very funny Saturday Night Live sketches from Saturday night, I don't know if you saw it, but if you didn't, you have to go back and look at it. It's Kellyanne Conway's day off.
Yes.
And that's how they handle it.
Yeah,
they basically pretend it doesn't exist, and then when they're on TV, they do Katrina Pearson level lying about it.
Yes. I like the one with Jake, I have to get this ice cream in the freezer.
Right. I mean, but it was a very, very funny sketch about how she's trying to take a day off and keeps getting called into CNN to talk about this ridiculous tweet that Donald just did, and then an hour later the same, and 3 hours later the same. And you know, her answers get more and more ridiculous, but they sound exactly like her, which is why Kate Buchanan playing her is just a genius. So it's really, I think, the answer to how that's going to happen. And you know, we're watching a campaign imploding, and then the next question is going to be, what does it mean for down ballot? Because you have people who have endorsed them, unendorsed them, endorsed them, unendorsed them, endorsed them, and then today I think they're going to unendorse him, but some are going to stick with him, because the fact of the matter is that when you look at the polls, 2/3 of Republicans want Trump to be Trump, and more people support Trump than support Paul Ryan. This is a party of Donald Trump and not the party of Paul Ryan. And yet, 2/3 of the Republicans, who are at most, state by state, half the population, and at worst less than that, 2/3 of them aren't enough to win you elections. So if you renounce him, you are rejecting that part of the Republican Party. If you endorse him, you're rejecting the other part of the Republican Party, neither of which is big enough to win. So for the Toomeys and the Kelly Ayotts, again, it may or may not show up in the polls. The Democrat may have 1 or 2 point lead, but that's not what it's going to mean when Election Day comes. A lot of these folks are going to get so disgusted about this, they're going to stay home. And the Democrats are going to be psyched, and they're going to show up. And that's not good for a Republican Senate, and we'll see what kind of effect that has on the House.
Yes. Well, I hope it turns over the majority to Democrats. However...
So do I. But it's real. This is happening. This is like not speculation. It's really melting down. In fact, the Time magazine, remember, had a cover a couple of weeks ago of Donald Trump starting to melt?
Yes.
Today's cover is like a puddle.
All right.
I'm melting. Oh, what a world. What a world. You know, and not good. No. So I'll leave you with those thoughts. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Wallman. I'm out of time, but he's not. He's got an hour and 15 minutes or so to talk about all sorts of things, and you can go in any direction. I mean, there's just so much here. Rape culture, Joe Scarborough, election stuff, Trump pathology. It's all there for the taking.
Yes. Before you go, just want to keep you up to date. I don't know if this is on the list. Former Toronto Star journalist accuses Donald Trump of sexual assault. I don't think that's on the list.
There's another one? I didn't have that one yet.
Yeah, okay, so that's 300, I think.
I think there was one in The Guardian, too. So, I mean, it just... The question is, if you're going to take an over... What do we do? 100? Is it over or under 100 by the weekend?
At this pace, it is.
The guy's 70 years old. He's had a lot of time to do this. And it sounds like he's had a pathology for a long, long time.
Yes. Oh, no. Okay. It's the People magazine reporter who now works at the Toronto Star.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Just to be clear, that's Natasha Stoyanov.
Yes. That one came out last night.
Yeah. So good. Let's see on this one has a picture. I was wondering, is she by any chance blonde? Yep, she is. Okay, Trump's got a thing.
Anyway, with that, I'll be off, and I'll listen to the show later by download, podcast, something. That's how I do it because I have to go to work. But if you're listening live, thanks for doing that. And we'll be back. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm sure a whole lot more is going to happen. Yeah.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. Might even have a poll or two.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure there's going to be more. Thank you. Let's get to the stories.
Yeah.
And let everybody know exactly. We'll catch everybody up in case you've been busy or too disgusted to read these things.
Right.
If that's the case, I'm sorry.
Yep. Alrighty. Take care.
Thanks, Greg. You do the same. And we move on. Let's go to the Toronto Star. I thought the People magazine retelling of it in the first person was better. So I guess this means we're just jumping right into the Donald Trump is a lech take, and I don't know that we're going to get done with that this year. There's a lot of time left in the year, but it's going to take a while. And you've likely seen them, but if by some chance you haven't, the People magazine one really has to be put on the record, even if you've heard it. And again, this is the same woman says it's not an additional one, the Toronto Star. It's the same journalist describing the same incident. I have to stop some auto-playing video on People magazine because People magazine. By the way, congratulations on, I think, moving up journalistically speaking, in terms of journalistic standards. People widely circulated, probably maybe even bigger than the Toronto Journal-Star, I guess. It's a national publication. But, good upward trajectory, I think, to the seriousness factor on the resume, and so that's good. And maybe that's why she kept her mouth closed. That has something to do with it. She's trying to make a life for herself. Anyway, you should hear her story. If you haven't, you're about to. Physically attacked by Donald Trump, a People writer's own harrowing story by Natasha Stoynoff. It's Stoynoff, if I'm not getting that pronunciation correct. All right. In December of 2005, there's a little note up top. People writer Natasha Stoynoff went to Mar-a-Lago, which of course is better known on our show as Perva-Lago. P.S. There's videotape. Just putting that out there. To interview Donald and Melania Trump. No videotape of this incident. I mean, other incidents, let's say. Okay. What she says happened next left her badly shaken. Reached for comment, a spokeswoman for Trump said, "This never happened. There is no merit or veracity to this fabricated story." What follows is Stoynoff's account. Just for the record, Anderson Cooper asked Donald Trump in the last debate, right? During the debate on Sunday, "Are you saying that you did not actually kiss women without their consent?" "I have not," Trump insisted. "I remember it differently," says Natasha. "In the early 2000s, I was assigned to the Trump beat for People magazine. For years, I reported on all things Donald. I tracked his hit show The Apprentice, attended his wedding to Melania Naus, and roamed the halls of his lavish Trump Tower abode. Melania was kind and sweet during our many chats, and Donald was as bombastic and entertaining as you would expect. We had a very friendly, professional relationship. Then, in December 2005, around the time Trump had his now infamous conversation with Billy Bush, I traveled to Mar-a-Lago to interview the couple for a first wedding anniversary feature story, because People magazine. Our photo team shot the Trumps on the lush grounds of their Florida estate, and I interviewed them about how happy their first year of marriage had been. When we took a break for the then very pregnant Melania to go upstairs and change wardrobe for more photos, Donald wanted to show me around the mansion. There was one tremendous room in particular, he said, that I just had to see. And then, of course, the reminder of the excerpt from the tapes where he says, "I just start kissing them." He said to Bush, "It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything." Well, back to our story. We walked into that room alone, and Trump shut the door behind us. I turned around, and within seconds, he was pushing me against the wall and forcing his tongue down my throat. Yowza. Now, I'm a tall, strapping girl who grew up wrestling two giant brothers. I even once sparred with Mike Tyson. It takes a lot to push me, but Trump is much bigger, a looming figure. And he was fast, taking me by surprise and throwing me off balance. I was stunned, and I was grateful when Trump's longtime butler, the racist butler, right, I guess, burst into the room a minute later, as I tried to unpin myself. The butler informed us that Melania would be down momentarily, and it was time to resume the interview. He just comes in. Melania is coming. Interesting, too. I wonder, the kind of guy that this butler is, does he ever, when he interrupts these things, think, oh my God, the boss is taking advantage? Or does he think, wow, all these women really want to have sex with my boss. He's so awesome. Or is it somewhere in between? Or is he like, well, I don't know whether these women really want this or not, but the boss is right in the way he describes women and how he approaches relationships with them, that he just grabs them and here they are. At first they, again, back to the rape culture of the movie trope thing. Like for how many years was it standard fare in the movies for the male lead in the middle of a fight to grab the female lead and just force a kiss on her, and then she pulls away and slaps him, and then they go back. He just goes back for another kiss, and the second one finally basically convinces her. The first one is the slap is just like, why, how dare you? And then by the second kiss, it's all over. This is what I wanted all along. That's standard movie fare for quite a long time, with variations along the way, lasting into modern times as well. So I don't know. Donald Trump sort of thinks that. Now, as Greg was pointing out, like James Bond types you think of as typically attractive to women, or at least that way. Well, it's a fictional character, so they can pretend, even if you don't find the actor physically attractive. The idea here is that the women do, and even so, I don't know. It's an old and outdated trope, is all I can say. And by outdated, I mean it was never right, but they used to use it a lot, and they use it less now. Donald Trump, does he think he's as attractive as James Bond? He might really think that. I have a feeling that he just thinks, well, there are certain elements that make up attractiveness, and one of them in his mind, I mean, he can't change his face, but one of them in his mind is hair. Like, I have good hair. You don't. You have a horrible hair. But, in his mind, that wacko bouffant is good hair. So he probably thinks as long as he has that thing glued to his head, women will love him, even if he's old and wrinkled and leathery and orange and overweight, which he is. I mean, he doesn't look like he did when he was younger. And when he's younger, he was, I guess, arguably more attractive than he is now, as most people are. But I don't know. I don't know whether people told him he was attractive and he believed it, or he just told himself, or he just thinks, I have hair. I'm not sure how sophisticated his understanding really is. Anyway, goodness. All right, well, let's get on with Natasha's story here. So we left off with the butler interrupting them. I was still in shock and remained speechless as we both followed him to an outdoor patio overlooking the grounds. This is where it really starts to get like, what? Why didn't you? But, you begin to understand or sympathize with the shock that leads to seeming helplessness. Not her seeming helpless, but a seeming state of helplessness. Okay, well, anyway, let's move on. Still in shock and remained speechless as we both followed him to an outdoor patio overlooking the grounds. In those few minutes alone with Trump, my self-esteem crashed to zero. Imagine that. It's not righteous anger. It's self-esteem crashing. How could the actions of one man make me feel so utterly violated? I'd been interviewing A-list celebrities for over 20 years. She's not starstruck, right? But what he'd done was a first. Did he think I'd be flattered? I tried to act normal. I had a job to do, and I was determined to do it. And here's the professionalism problem kicking in. It's like, oh, well, and what would have happened, by the way, had she punched him in the face, said, I'm calling the cops, stormed off, got back to People magazine and told the story? I don't know that her editor doesn't say, what the hell happened to my story? What am I going to run now? I can't run Donald Trump sexually attacked me story. We're finished. We'll just lose all our access to Trump. We have a Trump beat. I have to put both the P and the B in there. Emphasize. I don't know how that comes out without it. But, this is a publication that actually has a Trump beat and is serious about it. There's a very real likelihood that they get back and, well, you're fired. I'll just get somebody who can do this without trying to have sex with Trump. I didn't try. I got attacked by him. Yeah, sure. Surely we would have heard some more about this from other women, and we didn't, because they all have this reaction because they can't believe it. They're stunned, and then they're embarrassed at having been taken by surprise, and then they're just like, and here comes Melania, and what am I going to do? If I say something, who knows how this is going to end? So there she sits. She tried to act normal. She had a job to do, and she was determined to do it. I sat in a chair that faced Trump, who waited for his wife on a love seat. The butler left us, and I fumbled with my tape recorder. Trump smiled and leaned forward. You know we're going to have an affair, don't you? He declared in the same confident tone he uses when he says he's going to make America great again. Have you ever been to Peter Luger's for steaks? I'll take you. Again, with his shopping. Do you need any furniture? We're going to have an affair, I'm telling you. He also referenced the infamous cover of the New York Post during his affair with Marla Maples. You remember, he said, best sex I ever had. What a man. Melania walked in just then, serene and glowing. Donald instantly reverted back to doting husband mode as if nothing had happened, and we continued our interview about their wedded bliss. I nodded at his hollow words and smiled at his jokes, but I was nauseated. It didn't seem to register with him in the slightest that what he'd done might have hurt or offended me, or his wife. Of course, you gave him no indication that it did. I can't blame you for that. But, again, in his mind, if you start with a guy who believes that was a good thing to do, an okay thing to do at the very least, and that you probably were flattered, the fact that you would give no indication that it was bad or hurtful to him means, see, it was good. They love it. You can do anything. He's had a lot of practice getting that belief reinforced. An hour later, I was back at my hotel. My shock began to wear off and was replaced by anger. I kept thinking, why didn't I slug him? Why couldn't I say anything? Why couldn't you? Well, classic. How many of you have not had it happen to you where somebody, just forget physical attacks, says something to you, and an hour later, I just realized the perfect response would have been na. Yeah, the shock of being on the spot is overwhelming. It just is. The next morning, anger became fear. Earlier in my trip, I tried to arrange a session at Mar-a-Lago's spa for my chronic neck problem. The spa was part of a private resort separate from the Trump residence, but they were booked up. Trump had gotten wind of that before the interview and called himself, asking the top massage therapist if he would come in extra early to see me as a favor to him. I'd been up all night worrying. Had I done something to encourage his behavior? But I decided to keep the appointment, which I don't know that I would have done, but okay. I was running late and rushed to the spa with my luggage in tow. I found my designated therapist in a panic. She was in a panic, not the therapist. I'm so sorry, I apologize. Can we do 30 minutes and I'll pay you for the whole hour? Why does she want to do that? She's anxious to get the hell out of there before Trump shows up. Never mind that. Mr. Trump was here waiting for you, says the massage therapist. What? Where? Here, in the massage room. Oh, no. Waiting for you. He waited 15 minutes. Then he had to leave for a meeting. But why was he here, I asked. Is he coming back? The therapist shrugged. I lay on the massage table, but my eyes were on the doorknob the entire time. He's going to show up, and this guy's going to let him in with me, half naked on a table. I cut the session short, got dressed, and left for the airport. Back in my Manhattan office the next day, I went to a colleague and told her everything. We need to go to the managing editor, she said, and we should kill this story. It's a lie. You tell me what you want to do. That is very interesting, too. And a good point here, by the way. They should kill this story, not out of spite, but because just journalistically, the story's a lie. The story, after all, is about their wedded bliss, right? And he just jumped her while his pregnant wife was upstairs changing for a photo shoot about their story about wedded bliss. Why would you run this story? Well, if we were a newspaper, we might be concerned about telling the truth. Maybe, but we're a People magazine, and we're concerned with running pictures of famous people and saying things that they'll want to read about them. Although I got my bones jumped by Donald Trump while his pregnant wife was upstairs changing for the photo shoot is not a bad story to run. You know, people are going to want to thumb through that one, but I guess not in People magazine. They want that in National Enquirer. So, we go on from here. Tell me what you want to do, says her colleague. But like many women, I was ashamed and blamed myself for his transgression. But it is like many women and many people. They do this all the time. If you're not a complete megalomaniac like Donald Trump, you very often, something bad happens and you start looking for the reasons it happened and you start looking to yourself because you're a humble person. You're real. I minimized it. She says, it's not like he raped me, she says to herself. I doubted my recollection and my reaction. I was afraid that a famous, powerful, wealthy man could and would discredit and destroy me. He would. You're right. Especially if I got his coveted People feature killed. Imagine this, by the way. This is so important to Donald Trump that there be a report in People magazine that 1 year into his marriage with his wife pregnant, they're happy and they're, but I need people to know that we're still rich and successful. It's the messages on television every day. The People feature is worth nothing really to him, but to him, it's everything. Okay, fine. No accounting for taste. I just want to forget it ever happened, I insisted. The happy anniversary story hit the newsstands a week later, and Donald left me a voicemail at work thanking me. I think you're terrific, he said. The article was great, and you're great. Yeah, I thought, I'm great because I kept my mouth shut. Yup, that's exactly what he was calling to say. I asked to be taken off the Trump beat, and I never interviewed him again. This is an interesting part. A few months later, I saw Trump at the memorial service of a mutual friend, designer Oleg Cassini. We were both giving eulogies, but I avoided him. That winter, I actually bumped into Melania on Fifth Avenue in front of Trump Tower as she walked into the building carrying baby Barron. Natasha, why don't we see you anymore? She asked, giving me a hug. I was quiet and smiled, telling her I missed her, and I squeezed little Barron's foot. I couldn't discern what she knew. Did she really not guess why I hadn't been around? She probably did guess why you hadn't been around, but her guess was probably she had an affair with Donald, and I mean, maybe this would be her passive-aggressive way of showing that she knew that, or she's clueless. I don't know. I don't know if that matters a great deal. I don't know if that matters at all to the narrative about Trump, but just guessing. Except for a few close friends and family, I didn't talk about the incident. In time, I chalked it up to one of the hazards of a roller coaster ride of celebrity journalism. I danced barefoot in Cannes with John Travolta, sang with Paul McCartney, talked about Bogey with Bacall, quoted Shakespeare with Brando, and Prince Andrew yelled at me until I cried. Wow, that's interesting. Oh, and Donald Trump forced himself on me. I tried to make myself believe it was no big deal, only it was. Now he's running for president of our country. The other day I listened to him talk about how he treats women on the Access Hollywood tape. I felt a strong mix of emotions, but shock wasn't one of them. I was relieved. I finally understood for sure that I was not to blame for his inappropriate behavior. I had not been singled out. As he explained to Billy Bush, it was his usual modus operandi with women. I felt deep regret for not speaking out at the time. What if he had done worse to other female reporters at the magazine or any other place since then because I hadn't warned them? And lastly, I felt violated and muzzled all over again. During the presidential debate, Donald Trump lied about kissing women without their consent. I should know. His actions made me feel bad for a very long time. They still do. 4 years after the Trump incident, I left the magazine to write screenplays and books. A few are on the New York Times bestsellers list. I'm not sure what locker room talk consists of these days. I only know that I wasn't in a locker room when he pushed me against the wall. I was in his home as a professional, and his beautiful pregnant wife was just upstairs. Talk is talk, but it wasn't just talk in my case. It was very much action. And for the record, Mr. Trump, I did not consent. So, what do we make of this? Let's see what's going on in the Toronto Journal-Star. Now a Toronto Star. She's a Toronto Star journalist. Or a former one anyway. Did she work there after People or before? I'm not even really sure. I thought it might have been afterwards, but I guess afterwards she went on to write screenplays, apparently. Let's just see. Dateline Atlanta. So, I don't know. A former Toronto Star journalist has accused Donald Trump of sexually harassing her when she interviewed him for People magazine in 2005. Natasha, now an author, came forward with her story on Wednesday, joining at least 3 other women whose accounts of alleged assaults by the Republican presidential candidate were published the same day. Trump denied Stoyanov's allegation of assault, as he did the allegations for other women. We know about this already. The cascade of accusations poses a mortal threat to Trump's campaign, which is already near collapse, in the wake of newly revealed September 2005 video in which he boasted to an Access Hollywood host about kissing and groping women without their consent. Let's see. She worked for the Star for about 2 years in the early 1990s. There we go. As a reporter and photographer, and later for People for 2 decades. And here I thought it was a promotion to leave People and go to an actual newspaper like the Toronto Star. Turns out the Toronto Star, unfortunately, ends up as a stepping stone to People magazine. But I guess in terms of circulation, that makes a certain amount of sense. Anything else that, we can add to this? Is actually pretty much a consistent retelling, and I think it seems borrowed from the People piece here, with the additional note of the very bad cease and desist letter, which is added here. And then, of course, also referring to the story of retired businesswoman Jessica Leeds, now 74, who had told the New York Times that she was one of the 2 in the New York Times story about the airplane business and how she ended up next to him in first class 36 years ago, and then Trump lifted the armrest between them and groped her and tried to put his hand up her skirt. That's a nice one. She used the old he was like an octopus line, and she in her interview with the Times, at least the video section of the interview that accompanies the article, says, I hate to use that stupid cliche, but it was really true. His hands really were everywhere. Other ones noted in the Toronto Star roundup include Rachel Crooks of Ohio, who told the Times that Trump assaulted her in 2005, again, when she ran into him near an elevator at Trump Tower, where she worked as a 22-year-old receptionist for a real estate company. When she shook his hand, she said he would not let go, kissed her cheeks, and then kissed her directly on the mouth. A 4th woman, Mindy McGillivray, don't know whether I'm mangling that one, McGillivray, of Florida, what do you know, said Trump groped her behind. I was like, groped her behind a McDonald's or something? No, groped her behind. It's that archaic term there. That's whatever. Anyway, I don't know how else you would want to put it in the newspaper. At a 2003 Ray Charles concert at Mar-a-Lago, where she was assisting the event photographer, a friend of hers. All of a sudden I felt a grab, a little nudge. I think it's Ken's camera bag. That was my first instinct. I turned around and there's Donald. She told the Palm Beach Post. He sort of looked away quickly. I quickly turned back, facing Ray Charles, and I'm stunned. The assault allegations were not the only negative stories to emerge on Wednesday about Trump's treatment of women. 4 women who competed in the 1997 Miss Teen USA beauty pageant told BuzzFeed that Trump walked into their dressing room while they were changing. In a 1992 Christmas feature on Entertainment, I'm so moving from one to the next so quickly. Time out. That was actually the second time that I have seen reported that Donald Trump accidentally walked in on beauty pageant contestants in their dressing rooms while they were changing. Miss USA contestants and Miss Universe contestants, I believe, previously said the same thing. The fact that he's also doing this at Miss Teen USA only makes it a little bit more disturbing. But as I said last night on Twitter, and I'm beginning to believe that maybe doing a morning show is a mistake. Evening is when things are happening in this campaign. I should be doing an evening show because my Twitter feed from last night is all stuff that I thought, wow, if only the show were on now. But in case you are still stunned by all of this or still looking for trying to make some kind of sense out of all of this, how could it be that there's so many women coming forward? I will tell you this about the pageants. There will be pageant contestant after pageant contestant after pageant contestant after pageant contestant after pageant contestant who comes forward with, at the very least, the story of him walking in on them while they're changing because, duh, he did that. And also, there are a lot of them in the room. There's 50 of them if it's Miss USA or Miss Teen USA, and they would all have seen and noticed that. So they'll all likely corroborate it, unless for some reason they're Trump fans now. But the real point here is, why will there be so many former beauty pageant contestants coming out with this story? The answer is because the ability to walk in on changing pageant contestants while they're naked backstage is why he bought so many pageants. The man is a beauty pageant collector, a beauty pageant enthusiast, let's say, who bought several of them. Why in the world do you buy beauty contests? Again, it's not a way to make a tremendous amount of money. He bought it because it's the fastest and easiest way he could think of to consistently give himself the chance to walk in on naked beauty pageant contestants. How else are you going to do it? You could try to set yourself up as a judge, and but even the judges don't walk in on contestants because they're busy sitting in their seats being a judge. He's though checking things out. I'm the owner of the pageant. I have a special interest in making sure the production is going well. Oops, I walked in again on naked pageant contestants. That's why he bought the pageants, and to feed his pipeline. To put it succinctly, I mean, there's basically then we have to get on to this next story, which the Toronto Star report notes right after the walking in on people when they're changing. There's the 1992 Christmas feature on Entertainment Tonight, which also emerged yesterday, in which a 46-year-old Trump looked at a group of 10-year-old girls at Trump Tower, asked one a question, and then declared, "I am going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?" So that's where we get the, was it New York Post or Daily News? I can't remember. It sounds like the Post headline of having eyes for a 10-year-old. Remember, though, the other day he said, no, I'm not into the 12-year-olds. Of course, at least when the 12-year-old is the daughter of a family friend, Paris Hilton. Though I did watch her sex tape a little bit later. So I don't know whether you're going to be dating her in 10 years. I don't doubt that if she makes a sex tape in 10 years, you'll probably watch that. But okay. So, yeah, eyes for the 10-year-old girls. Oh, I'm just kidding. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, sure. Whatever. But what that made me think of is, again, Trump's bizarre and, frankly, perverted vertical integration operation for his sexual harassment schemes. He's bought multiple pageants so that he can walk in on naked contestants. But what's the idea? What about the 10-year-old thing? Well, okay. Is he kidding? I don't know. He's certainly got the mechanism to put him away. 10 years old, I recognize. He is basically saying, I think you can give him this much credit. He is saying, yeah, I don't actually want to be dating a 10-year-old. So good for you, Don. You got your head screwed on right when it comes to the 10 and, I guess, 12-year-olds. Not so much necessarily with the 13-year-olds, depending, I guess, on the circumstances. That we'll find out a little bit more about in December when pre-trial things kick into gear again on that rape accusation. But in the meantime, Donald Trump, I mean, what does he do, by the way? If he sees a 10-year-old who he thinks this 10-year-old would make a fantastic 18-year-old or 20-year-old that I could date in 10 years, how do I guarantee access to this lovely young girl? And the answer is, I actually have a mechanism for this. Maybe not at 10 necessarily, but why not get her under contract right now? For instance, hey, maybe, well, I don't know, I guess he could just start him in child modeling right away. I don't know how his modeling agency handled actual kids being marketed as kids models. I know that they handled actual kids being marketed as women models, but I don't know whether he actually did like kids stuff at that time or ever for that matter. But what do I mean by putting them in the pipeline? Hey, you know what? You're fabulous. In 10 years, you're going to be a knockout. But let me tell you something. In 5 years, you could be in Miss Teen USA pageant. What do you think about that, kid? I put you under contract right now. Keep you exclusively under contract. 1, you can't talk for the rest of your life as soon as you're under contract with me. And 2, I keep you close. I'll put you in the Miss Teen USA precursor pageants, move you through Miss Teen USA, keep you under contract there, move you into Miss USA a couple of years later. You win the contest, you do well, I find you a place in the Miss Universe pageant. You hit the wall here somewhere along the way, well, you know what, you play your cards right. I could hook you up with a modeling agency, which I also own and under which you would also be under contract and non-disclosure agreement with me for your entire life. Why wait for them to be scooped up and taken away from you by other people or life events or joining the Girl Scouts or going to middle school or any of those other inconvenient things that get in the way of beautiful 10-year-olds becoming spoiled for me before they become the age at which I'll date them, whatever age that might be. Why not get them under contract now? I don't know. Seems like he's got the perfect setup, and he's not afraid to use it. So, you know, what a great scam, though. Is he just using his money that way? It's certainly not clearing a huge profit, these beauty pageants. All right. Marching on through the Toronto Star piece seems useful just to get through the bulk of the accusations that came out yesterday. So there's the 10-year-olds. There was also Rachel Maddow, who said on NBC's Today Show that she would interview another Trump accuser on Thursday morning. Wow, that's now. Has she been doing it? Does anybody know? Has it happened yet? You can let me know, and we'll do our level best to get the results on the air. If not today, then, well, hell, certainly tomorrow. Okay, is there more? There is. I think we've hit most of the highlights. I liked the way the Toronto Star just sort of summed those up, but let me just comb through the headlines and see. I think also Slate last night put together a piece that I put in pocket, which I thought was at the time was being billed as the comprehensive list under the headline of "The Floodgates Are Open on Trump Sexual Assault Allegations" by Tori Bosch. Have we missed anything? Let's see. Starts with the tapes, then the Sunday night debate. Now accusers coming forward. Okay, here's some more. Ready? A Miss Teen USA 2001 contestant told The Guardian today that Trump, quote, deliberately walked in on her and other contestants in their dressing rooms while they were naked and getting dressed for a rehearsal. This report followed a BuzzFeed story alleging that Trump, during the 1997 pageant, that's what we just read about, intentionally walked into a communal dressing room being used by girls as young as 15. So in 10 years, I'll be dating you. In 5 years, I will be walking into your dressing room while you're naked. Sort of think of it as a down payment. God, that's disgusting. And yet another report from today. CBS News produced a 1992 video. That's the 10-year-old girls on their way through Trump Tower. Still, others are making full-fledged allegations of sexual assault against Trump. Below is a list of women who have so far accused Trump. If we've missed any, tell us in the comments. There's Natasha Stoyanov, whose story we read from 2005. Jessica Leeds, the woman on the airplane from the early 80s. Rachel Crooks is the woman from Ohio, right? She was in Trump Tower helping the she was working as a receptionist at the real estate company, and he saw her in the elevator. There's Mindy McGillivray. She was the photographer's assistant at Mar-a-Lago. By the way, let's see. The most recent was, I thought somewhere along, well, let's go through these, because I thought there was one that was as recent as 2013. It happened at the pageants. Here's Erin Burnett's friend, right? Unidentified friend. That came up before the weekend was over. Erin Burnett talked about it on the show, on her show on CNN on October 7th. When did it happen? Unknown. This was after the infamous Grab 'em video surfaced. CNN's Erin Burnett said on the air that an unnamed friend of hers reported that Trump once attempted to kiss her on the mouth. Burnett quoted her friend as saying, "Trump took Tic Tacs, suggested I take them also, leaned in, catching me off guard, and kissed me almost on the lips. I was totally freaked out." That was, I believe, during a meeting at Trump Tower. And again, she had to play the nothing happened game when everybody came back and tried to salvage the deal she was trying to work out when she was there. Who else? Cassandra Searles. Yes, I did see this one also yesterday. We found out this one in June, actually, and I guess it's now just having to be reiterated. In 2013 is when it happened, and she was then Miss Washington, USA. He's going for a 50-state strategy and get one from each state. She competed in the Miss USA pageant, which Trump owned. Yahoo News reported that in June, Searles posted a Facebook photo of Trump with the Miss USA 2013 competitors. And she wrote this Facebook post. "Do y'all remember that one time we had to do our on-stage introductions, but this one guy treated us like cattle and made us do it again because we didn't look him in the eye? Look me in the eye and say that. Do you remember then when he proceeded to have us line up so he could get a closer look at his property? Oh, I forgot to mention that guy will be in the running to become the next president of the United States." After some of her fellow beauty queens responded to the post, she added in a comment, "He probably doesn't want me telling the story about that time he continually grabbed my ass and invited me to his hotel room." Yeah, probably not. I like that post. She also hashtagged it, "I have worse stories, so come at me, bro." That should be an entertaining one. Then, of course, there's the story of Jill Harth, whose story we've mentioned once or twice on the show. We found out about it in May. She said it happened in 1993. This was when she was at Trump's place trying to work out a deal for him to acquire or sponsor yet another beauty pageant, oddly enough. And this is the one who said that he pulled her into Ivanka's bedroom and assaulted her there. Who else? Temple Taggart. We found out about this one in May of this year as well. She says it happened in 1997. What did happen? She was Miss Utah in 1997. That's what happened. "He kissed me directly on the lips. I thought, oh God, gross." He was married to Marla Maples at the time. I think there were a few other girls that he kissed on the mouth. I was like, wow, that's inappropriate. And then, of course, there was also the allegations of Ivana Trump herself, which we found out about in 1983. She said it happened in 1989, that they fought over, well, he was mad, remember, about being in pain over surgery that was either has been variously described as getting rid of a bald spot, or it's described here as a hairline procedure with a plastic surgeon that she had recommended. He was so furious that she says he decided to punish her by beating her up and raping her. So that sounds troublesome, to say the very least. So I think, what was that, 10, I guess they had? And then there may be more along the way. I guess we'll just wait. Time will tell how many we're going to get on this eventually. All right. I also mentioned earlier that Katrina Pearson had gone on CNN yesterday to defend against the allegations of, what was the name of the woman who was on the plane with him? Jessica Leeds, by saying, it's all impossible because the armrests in first class in airplanes of that era did not go up. I just wanted to kind of point out the fact that there is an account called NYC Aviation. NYC Aviation on Twitter had this to say: "Hi, Katrina Pearson. The aircraft types you mentioned all did operate into New York City," and goes on to list, I guess, links to all of the various types of aircraft that did in fact operate at the time in and out of New York City from various domestic locations. And suffice to say that people who have reason to know that that claim about those armrests is wrong are happy to provide the proof for everyone who wants to look into it on Twitter. I just found it interesting that so quickly it was debunked. I didn't necessarily know that it was wrong, but I knew that if Katrina Pearson was saying it, there was a pretty good chance that it wasn't wrong. And it reminded me very much of Steve Bannon. It actually reminded me very much of the defenses to, I don't know, like the Texas Air National Guard stuff about they didn't have the technology to have this font at the time, and the IBM Selectric didn't have it, and the kerning is wrong. You remember all of that stuff? These sort of hyper-technical, pedantic fights about things that do anything but focus on the fact that, well, he's being accused of sexual harassment here. I don't really think that it's central to the story what model aircraft he was on, but you want to talk about that? Fine. Well, we'll dispense with it rather quickly. All right. Let's see. In the Trump or the Slate thing, just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. The women in the pageants who said they were walked in on. Did we get this one? There's the 2005 one, or the 2013 one from Cassandra Searles. Was there a 2001 one in this list? Let's see. I don't think so. So I think that makes this one here a third instance of this one. I gotta keep track of this. I need a chart to keep track of this. Here's one from 2001. Miss USA 2001 contestant: Trump barged into room when we were naked. This in The Guardian. I think we mentioned this one. Let's just see if I can keep track of this one. Donald Trump deliberately walked in on two young Miss USA 2001 contestants while they were naked and getting dressed for a rehearsal. One of the former beauty contestants has claimed in an interview with The Guardian. The two women were putting on their outfits to rehearse the opening number. The former contestant recalled when Trump, who owned the pageant at the time as part of the Miss Universe family of pageants, burst into the room without a word. Just before he entered, the former contestant said she heard the security detail outside the dressing room tell someone approaching the door that the women inside were naked. Do you think they said that? Don't go in there naked. They're changing? Did they say naked? I'm just weirded out by that. Mr. Trump just barged right in, didn't say anything, stood there and stared at us. What, do you think the bathroom was in there? I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, it's not even that he's passing through an open area where they're changing. He's barging into changing rooms and not saying nothing, just looking at you. Mr. Trump just barged right in, didn't say anything, stood there and stared at us. She recalled Trump's attitude, she said, seemed to be, I can do this because I can. He didn't walk in and say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking for someone. She continued. He walked in, he stood and he stared. He was doing it because he knew he could. The alleged incident happened in her shared dressing room behind the stage at the Genesis Convention Center in Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana? Gary, Indiana. Not Louisiana. All right, I'm not going to do this whole stupid thing, right? The woman who did not wish to be identified is the second competitor from the 2001 Miss USA pageant to claim that Trump took advantage of owning the pageant, which he broadcast on NBC. Again, NBC not looking all that good and all this, in order to view the contestants naked. In order to view the contestants naked. That's why he went there. That's also why he bought the place. A torrent of sexual misconduct accusations have followed Trump throughout his run for president. Goes on to discuss the tapes, the New York Times piece about the woman on the plane. And then Jessica Leeds' reaction to seeing him on the Sunday night debate. I wanted to punch the screen, said Jessica Leeds, who said Trump had groped her on the plane 3 decades ago, like an octopus. That one. That story. Then the Rachel Crooks story, the receptionist in the Trump Tower, waltzing in. The other 2001 beauty contestant to accuse Trump of misconduct was Tasha Dixon. In an interview with CBS of Los Angeles, Dixon, the former Miss Arizona, recalled an incident in which Trump came waltzing into a room while a number of contestants were half naked or undressed. Dixon was describing a separate incident to the one detailed by the Guardian U.S. by the other contestant. He went from dressing room to dressing room in 2001. In other words, annually, when they had the pageant, he would walk in, and sometimes he made excuses, sometimes he didn't. By 2001, he was just opening the doors and going in and going, He's probably, if they had a microphone on him, you would have heard him going, and just staring at him naked. Can I help you? Okay, you're grossing me out here, dude. So, not only that, it's interesting that I guess they were 2 to a dressing room in that case in 2001, and he just went from one to the other to the other. Looking at him. The Guardian corroborated the former contestant's story with another contestant who became her friend during the 2001 pageant. The other contestant confirmed that the Guardian's source told her about the incident at the pageant site in 2001, shortly after it occurred. The second woman, who was sharing the dressing room with the Guardian source when Trump allegedly barged in, did not respond to several emails requesting interviews. Trump owned the Miss Universe family of pageants to which Miss USA belonged from 1996 to 2005. The first contestant to win Miss Universe under Trump's ownership was Alicia Machado, famously name-checked by Hillary Clinton during the first presidential debate. You all know about that story. Trump has boasted in the past, during a 2005 segment on the Howard Stern show, about being able to view beauty contestants naked. And with Howard Stern, he's quite open about it. I'll go backstage before a show, and everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else, he said in a tape obtained by CNN. And no men are anywhere, and I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes, and you see these incredible looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that. Including, by the way, Miss Teen USA. Just putting that out there again. Dixon, the other Miss USA 2001 competitor who has spoken out, said many of the contestants' very first encounter with Trump occurred while many of them were naked. He just came strolling right in. She said there was no second to put a robe on or any sort of clothing or anything. Some of the girls were topless. We were naked or half naked in a very physically vulnerable position, she continued. And then to have the pressure of the people that work for him telling us to go fawn all over him, go walk up to him, talk to him, get his attention, because he's also a judge, right? He's running the place. You want to have any hope of winning this contest, naked or not, go tell him you loved it. Separately, BuzzFeed reported on Wednesday that several teen beauty queens from the 1997 Miss Teen USA said Trump entered a communal dressing room while several of them were naked. One girl was only 15 years old at the time. Another Miss USA contestant from 2001 who spoke to The Guardian did not recall Trump showing inappropriate behavior. Well, she recalled Trump being backstage, she said, but only on the evening that the pageant was nationally televised. The chaperones made announcements that he was there and would be coming into the dressing room. The former contestant, who wished to remain anonymous, wrote in an email, "That gave us all a heads up. It was also very close to the pageant starting and very brief. I would imagine that most, if not all, contestants were already, or at least should have been, dressed to compete. I was like, oh, that's what you mean, dressed to complete, like completely dressed? No, dressed to compete. Completely dressed to compete, is how I'll now understand it. The contestant remembered Trump standing in the doorway and wishing them good luck, and said he did not parade through the room. I am not endorsing anyone, but giving an honest account of meeting Mr. Trump. That's her recollection of what she saw. Anyway, the contestant who accused Trump of bursting into her dressing room acknowledged that not every contestant had negative experiences with Trump. She did not report Trump's behavior at the time, she said, because her position was too tenuous. This was my boss. I'm there to represent my state, my town, my reputation on one of the most prestigious stages on the planet. I had not a lot of experience under my belt, and it was horrifying. It was extremely uncomfortable from there forward. Until she saw Dixon's interview, she thought she and the other woman in the dressing room were Trump's only targets. No, annual event. Annual event. It's important for people to know that this has been a personality trait of his for a long time, she says, explaining her motivation for speaking out. He completely exerted his power and the control that he had, and I do believe that kind of behavior perpetuates rape culture and makes young boys think they can behave that way. Trump spokeswoman Hope Hicks did not immediately reply to an email seeking comment. How does she do it? We'll never know. We'll never know. There's more. Does it matter? Should I keep going on? I'll just comb through the rest of the headlines. Oh, here's a different one. I mean, a different take. It's not another woman that he walked in on. It's just another thing that's also terrible. And guess what? It's another Miss Teen USA. Miss Teen USA 2010. Cammie Crawford is her name. And guess what? She was the first African-American Miss Teen USA, it turns out. Took till 2010 to get one. But okay. What does she have to say? Former Miss Teen USA Cammie Crawford says she was told Mr. Trump does not like black people during the 2010 beauty pageant. How would you like to be told that? You would not. Quite honestly, as a white person, if somebody doesn't like black people, I'm not looking forward to being told that either. That really? Because that's awful. I wish I didn't know that about that person. Crash time. Dang. Okay, so we'll try and restart Firefox and get that one back up. But basically, the gist of this story, she wins. She's going to be introduced to Mr. Trump as the winner. She's just won the pageant that he owns. And I think it's a fair expectation then that you're going to meet the pageant glitterati, if you will. The people who run the thing, right? But this is what ends up happening. She's the first, and she knows it, she's the first woman of color to win the title. Oh, I'm sorry, in almost a decade. So it's not the first one ever. There we are. As the first woman of color to win the title in almost a decade, I was forewarned prior to meeting him. Maybe she was the first person of color to win since he owned it. That, which might have something to do with why they weren't winning. But okay. But how about this for a warning? She's 17 years old. Okay? And she's won. And this is one of the things, this is why, like the Alicia Machado thing was also so strange and damaging. But these two women, one, I guess you still say a girl at 17? I don't know. What's the politically correct, I think up until you're 18, you're a girl. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway, this 17-year-old pageant winner, and in Alicia Machado's case, she's 20 years old when she wins Miss Universe. To compete in a beauty pageant, I think there's a lot of psychological profiling that you could do, but I think at a minimum you could say, I think you'd be pretty safe in saying that somebody who participates in a beauty pageant for healthy reasons, if there are any, and I assume that there really, I don't see why you couldn't, and maybe less healthy reasons as well. In either case, I think it's probably fair to say that these are people who are looking for, whether they require it or not, they're looking for validation of some kind from this competition. And by the way, you're looking for validation if you join a chess competition too, as you're looking to find out that you're the best chess player. Validation doesn't necessarily mean about your looks. Besides which, there's a talent portion, I think. I don't know, maybe Miss USA eliminated the talent portion. Got no idea. But okay, you want validation on your looks? I'm okay with that too. Whatever. But that suggests that they're in a fragile place. Maybe fragile. I mean, they could be intellectually and emotionally very strong and say, I didn't win and I can handle that. Or I did win. But if you win, I think, okay, enjoy the moment. You've been validated. You found out you are Miss Teen USA. You win on whatever criteria it was that you thought you were being judged. You won. You're the best at those things. One Miss Universe, you're the best in the world that was willing to compete at these things. Okay, but this is your moment. And both times, imagine being told by the guy who owns the pageant, that's your moment. You've just been crowned. You're the best in the country. You're the best in the world at this thing that you do. No, you're not. Wow. That's really super disappointing to have that happen, right? You think, here you are, I'm finally validated. I'm one of the most beautiful women in the world. They just said so, objectively. I don't know if you necessarily want to buy into the criteria, but okay, you do. And then a guy comes in and says, you're a pig. What? Why can't you have this? This is what you were in it for, and it gets taken away. And then he starts telling you you're too fat. And here, 17-year-old girl wins Miss Teen USA. This is terrific. I'm doing great. And by the way, don't get too carried away with yourself. Don't take this the wrong way, they say. But and that's incredible. Mr. Trump doesn't like black people. And that's the way they put it to her. Mr. Trump doesn't like black people. So don't take it the wrong way if he isn't extremely welcoming towards you. If he is, then you must be the type of black he likes, which I don't need to explore. But imagine being told that. Well, sure, you won Miss Teen USA, but the guy who owns Miss Teen USA doesn't really think, probably, it's very likely that he won't really be happy about you winning because you're black. What? Son of a... And I don't know what his reaction actually was, but I don't think it probably didn't even matter to her. At that point, she was like, this guy is disgusting and a racist. I'll go through with this meeting because I just won. I earned this title, and they're going to take it away with me, I guess, if I don't play along. But holy cow. What a rotten thing to do. And also, what's the right or wrong way? Is there a right way that I don't know of to take the news that, by the way, Mr. Trump doesn't like black people? But don't take that the wrong way. You mean the racist way? I mean, isn't that the right way? He doesn't like black people. He's racist, right? No, you're taking it the wrong way. Really? Why is that? I don't know. There's never going to be any explanation of that. It's just one of the things that people say. Don't take this the wrong way. Or, no offense, but Mr. Trump doesn't like black people. Well, you can't just say no offense and then, okay, I said no offense. No offense, but you're disgusting and I hate your guts. What? Why are you so upset with me? I told you no offense. Now, that doesn't erase anything. What do you mean, don't take this the wrong way? Don't take this the wrong way. You're an idiot. I don't know. I had other things to say, but we're on the radio. Don't take this the wrong way. You. There's your answer. But don't take it the wrong way. There is, I'm sure there's more. I'm combing or skimming over the headlines to see if there's anything else that we missed. Oh, here's a Washington Post piece, but yeah. Oh, that was a more interesting take, but I have yet to set up my subscription, so I can't quite get around to reading this piece. But by the way, it's not all about the women he was harassing and abusing. There's also a piece out there which is fantastically titled and which I think we'll have to get to tomorrow and further on. And tomorrow might be a great day for it, but I'll remind you of the headline. I'm one of the Central Park Five. Donald Trump won't leave me alone. Yeah, there's another group of 15-year-olds that he just won't stop chasing after out there, and they're not all girls. Just put that out there. Okay, what else can we catch up on in our roundup of headlines? Let's see. Oh, Rolling Stone has a full timeline of Donald Trump's creepiness while he owned Miss Universe. So we got that going for us. Here's one of the outdated tweets from Justin Wolfers, who said, one day, 5 different news organizations, 6 separate cases of sexual assault. So that's outdated. We can get rid of that one. Miss Washington 2013, I think we heard her story. She was the Facebook author. And, oh, yes, there's at least one more item I need to add as, I guess, follow-up to yesterday's story about, well, remember Swedish Jewfish's piece that I read for you on yesterday's very special episode of Kagro in the Morning. We all knew about the trafficking, the untold story of Trump model management, part 1. First of all, I got a response from Swedish Jewfish in the comments who said very clearly, very correctly, hey, I wish I'd been contacted about this, and I had to apologize. I wrote her a note and said, God, I'm sorry. You know what? This show is weird. We do this show in a weird way. Any other show, I think, well, one with a production staff anyway, or one that's interview-based without a production staff, like, for instance, Hopping Mad, they very frequently do the guests thing. They say, read an article, they enjoy it, they discuss the article, they bring the author on. I do it in a weird way. I find the article, I read the article most of the time for the first time right here on the air live, and there's no opportunity for me to say, I'm going to have questions about this, I want to arrange an interview ahead of time. I just don't do that. Occasionally, when we're approached that way, we'll do it. I got no objection to bringing her on, and in fact, I said several times during the reading, gosh, this is raising so many more questions. So I just wanted to apologize to her, and I did in the note. I didn't mean to surprise you, like ambush you by reading this thing and exclude you from the discussion of your own piece. And I think she's okay with that. She kind of understands what I was doing with that. But yeah, we may be able to have her on the air to discuss questions, and maybe even in advance of part 2, which she says is coming soon. But guess what? Without giving away too much, I will say I am not sure what the answer is yet, because it sounds like she's in discussions about publication of her stories at some point in the near future, and we don't want to do anything that would get in the way of that. I'd love to have the exclusive question and answer opportunity, but if there's some sort of exclusivity thing that publishers might want for her story, I'd rather have it published. But look, we're not going to ask her to do anything that would jeopardize that, obviously. So I'll keep my ear to the ground about that and see if we can't get her on here. Among the many items with which I thought I might follow up on that story, which fell by the wayside because of all the actual direct accusations of sexual assault and sexual harassment today, is this other piece of the puzzle to I guess one of the continuing themes that we speculate about here on the show. Donald Trump and the possibility of hidden video cameras in that special bikini changing room that he maintained at Pervalago. And I keep saying, the chances that he wasn't videotaping that, I think, are growing smaller every day, let's say. And then I saw this piece, which I thought I would share with you, and let you draw your own conclusions. It's in BuzzFeed, to no one's surprise. Aram Roston is the reporter for a piece entitled, Inside Donald Trump's Surveillance Operations. What do we mean? Subtitle bit here says, sources, Trump's little-known home near Washington, D.C., and guess what? It's near me. It's really near me. Has security cameras inside and outside. Not surprising. Monitored from New York. according to insiders. Politicians have stayed there for, quote, safe haven, which of course leads me to think blackmail tape. Ubiquitous surveillance equipment is also threaded throughout his Trump National Golf Club. Let's take a quick look. We'll see what we can fit in. The suburban house on Watermark Place in Sterling, Virginia, it's close by, doesn't look like a Donald Trump residence. No classical columns, no gold accents, but sources say it has one feature common to many Trump properties, which opens a window onto the candidate's worldview, an extensive and closely monitored surveillance system. Again, I can imagine it. The interior is monitored by multiple surveillance cameras, according to 3 former Trump employees familiar with the house. The video was watched remotely by Trump's security team 250 miles away in New York City, the sources said. Trump's adjacent golf club, the Trump National Golf Club, also has an extensive web of surveillance cameras, these former employees said. The technology includes a license plate reader to record who comes and goes from the club, 2 of the sources said. The extent of the video surveillance is far beyond what is routine for a golf club, and that's the important part, said the 3 former employees, all of whom are familiar with the industry. 2 of them said that the cameras were monitored intently, almost invasively. Workers, they said, would occasionally get called by security in New York if they were in an unexpected place. The elaborate surveillance arrangement is consistent with the pattern. BuzzFeed News previously reported that in his bedroom at the Mar-a-Lago estate, remember this one? Trump had a switchboard that allowed him to eavesdrop on any landline there, according to people who worked at the estate. Unlike at Mar-a-Lago, there is no allegation of phone eavesdropping capabilities at Trump's golf operations near the nation's capital. But I pause here to say how interesting that they would have dropped this in here. I think there are reporters on the beat that I keep speculating about by talking about the fact that, remember, he did this very weird thing with the eavesdropping at Mar-a-Lago. What's the likelihood that he's not making use of camera technology, particularly when he already has a special room set aside and stocked with bikinis just in case models come by and he can talk them into changing into bikinis? You think there's not a camera in there? Please. Overseeing Trump's surveillance operations is Matthew Calamari, a powerful behind-the-scenes figure who has been in Trump's world, which is a sex cult, by the way, for 35 years. Calamari reportedly came to Trump's attention when he tackled hecklers at a tennis match. According to one Trump biography, the large and imposing Calamari, a former college linebacker, said he would be willing to kill for his boss. Good to know. Good thing to say in an interview. Trump is seeking the presidency when surveillance and concern about it is more pervasive in American life than ever before. Just this month, the Oliver Stone film Snowden opened, depicting Edward Snowden's revelations of how the NSA collects huge amounts of data on all Americans, and FBI Director James Comey said it would be sensible for most people to cover their laptop cameras. Meanwhile, the FBI and other federal agencies are filming Americans from the skies, and surveillance cameras have become ubiquitous in airports, stores, and many city streets. In workplaces, employers track more and more of their employees' activities, and web cameras are increasingly common in people's homes. As a candidate, Trump has called for surveillance of mosques and has supported reauthorizing the Patriot Act, including the NSA's bulk collection of data on telephone calls, emails, and other digital communications. I tend to err on the side of security, he told radio host Hugh Hewitt in June. So turning it more into a policy concern at this point. Asked about the surveillance at Trump's Virginia home and adjacent golf club, a Trump Organization spokesperson said in an email statement, "We do not comment on the specific security procedures that are in place at our properties," yada, 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 yada. The spokesperson declined to request a request to specify what was inaccurate or untrue. They went ahead and just said, we don't comment on it, but it's inaccurate. And wouldn't answer questions about other aspects of the story, such as Calamari's role. A spokeswoman for the campaign declined to comment on any aspect of the story, saying the response from the Trump Organization was perfectly adequate. So, when BuzzFeed News previously revealed that Trump had that switchboard at Mar-a-Lago, Trump spokeswoman denied that too. This story is based mainly on 5 sources, 4 former employees at the golf resort, 1 person close to the campaign. All but one said they planned to vote for Trump, by the way, and the former employee spoke on condition of anonymity because, like virtually all Trump employees, they had signed sweeping non-disclosure agreements. The person close to the campaign said he isn't authorized to speak to the press. Now, this was the interesting part here. We'll see if we can't cram this in. On some occasions, Trump's home in Virginia has also been used by special guests, 2 sources said. There were politicians that would stay there, said one former club worker who claimed to have seen them. This person recalled Trump saying, anything they need, make sure they have. Sometimes, this person said, the guests would come there for a safe haven. Meanwhile, they were being videotaped. People stay there, the source said. That was the source familiar with the Trump campaign. Politicians, he said, believed it was a safe place to go, because he said so. This source emphasized that no one except Trump ever stayed in Trump's actual bedrooms. A third source who used to work at the golf club said he was unaware of politicians staying there, but said other members of Trump's family and some officials of the Trump organization did. 2 other sources said they were unaware of anyone except Trump staying in his private residence in recent years. And it's a pretty unassuming residence at that. I believe I could find it for you if you wanted to know. Trump's house is a 2-car garage, a bit of lawn, a myrtle tree planted amid some hedges. It's very standard for around here. Records confirm that Trump purchased it in 2009 through a company called Trump Marks Asia, LLC. Trump uses this little-known and subdued private residence very rarely, sources said, just a few times a year when he visits the golf course. There is one entrance from the public street and a separate entrance from the fairway attached to the Trump National Golf Club. In addition to his home, Trump's club has another private residence, a row house, available for club guests or members to rent. Like Trump's personal home, it is accessible from 2 entrances, either the golf club greens or the street. The home is sometimes rented to members or guests who need overnight stays. Now, why politicians in the Washington, D.C. area would need a house this far out, I couldn't tell you. But I don't know. He owns property nearby. He probably keeps a house or 2 there for whatever reasons. That's pretty interesting. By the way, to watch the video feed, said one former club employee, all you would need would be the IP address, the correct IP address. So, I don't know, Russia, if you want to hack that, I guess now's your chance. There's actually a little bit more to this piece, explaining a little bit about Calamari and his background, but I think the key part there was just another piece of the surveillance puzzle. Speaking of other pieces of the puzzle, tomorrow we will try and catch up with some of the submissions made by our correspondents around the country. We have currently got a nice backup of a bunch of stories from various contributors. We'll catch up with some of those things, I hope, tomorrow. Plus, of course, it being Friday, we'll see if we can't check in for our regular or at least semi-regular visits with Josie Duffy Rice. I bet she's got something to say about a number of these subjects. What about what they have to say on the after show coming up right after this? Well, I'll give you an update on that. Let me switch over. It's Thursday, and that means thank God it's Jovidi. That's the episode name, of course, on Thursdays. And the after show, parents from a Greek village near Athens lock out refugee children from school over fears they are diseased. Where have we heard that before? Tired of being associated with Donald Trump, students revolt against Liberty University President Jerry Falwell Jr., and Clinton's WikiLeaks emails reveal that John Podesta arrogantly ignored former Blink-182 guitarist Tom DeLonge's pleas to disclose the government's secret files on space aliens and UFOs. What about on the last half? Well, hang on just a moment, and after this, I'll tell you what's coming up then.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
You're not going to believe this one. On the last half, they'll be reporting that defendants in the Bundy trial testify that, you don't believe this, I can't believe it, gosh. God told them to save America by taking over an Oregon wildlife nature preserve. And better known for colorful fleeces, Patagonia really wants its customers to vote. It says customers. What do you know?